I really was so determined to not have a boss and not have to work that 9 to 5
At the laundromat.
At the laundromat in my coveralls. Yeah, so I just really was so motivated by that. I would do whatever it took to make it happen.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, we are live in Miami, Florida, and I got a special guest who I just hosted a meetup with last night out here in South Beach. She goes by Investor Girl Britt. I got Brittany Arnason. Brittany, welcome to the show.
What's up? Good to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And man, it's been fun just kind of connecting with you finally in person. We had chatted a little bit on social media for the past 6 months. And it was great to fly out here yesterday. We had a pop-up meetup literally the day after Thanksgiving.
Good turnout.
And we had a good turnout and got to meet some really cool folks. And so that was nice. But we got to hang out a little bit last night and go out to a nice dinner. Man, that restaurant was amazing. What was the name of it?
The food in Miami. That was called Queen.
Wow. We had omakase. So there's like a 6-course like sushi meal. But you walk in, there was like literally like a DJ in the middle of the restaurant, 40-foot ceilings, and there was like
disco balls.
Yes. Dancers, entertainment, people hanging from the ceilings. That was so cool.
That's a casual dinner in Miami, I think.
That's like every night for you.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, that was a good time. How's Miami? Because you've been here for what, 3 months now?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I lost count. I don't know anymore. But the reason I came to Florida was for the Bigger Pockets conference.
Okay.
So
in Orlando.
Here, yeah, to Orlando. I prefer Miami, but Disney's cool too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that was a fun conference.
I didn't go to the BP Con this year. How did it compare to the last one in San Diego?
San Diego was cool too.
Yeah.
But they rented out the Universal Studios.
Okay.
So we just went as a big group.
Whoa.
And they rented out the whole thing. So it was just a private event at Universal. So no lines for the rides. And that was probably the best experience at Disneyland that I'll ever have.
I love that. And you were speaking?
I spoke.
Yeah. What did you speak on?
Commercial real estate, social media, did a few different panels and things like that too.
I love that. So I think your story is unique. I think the listeners are really going to gravitate towards your story. They can relate to it because you started off with single family homes and a lot of residential fix and flip. And then you got into self-storage. And now you're known as an expert in the self-storage field. You're doing a lot of stuff with AJ Osborne, who I have yet to meet, but I'd love to have him on the podcast sometime. And you just bought a boutique hotel down here in Belize recently with Bethany. We love Bethany. She was on the podcast a couple months back. But anyhow, so you're doing a lot of stuff. You're putting out content. You're building a brand on social media. Tell us, like, what are you doing today? Give us a snapshot of what you're doing today.
Yeah, so the boutique hotel was the most recent acquisition, but that was a cool one. Like you said, I bought it with Bethany, who has been my SEC attorney for the past 3 years. So she is amazing, and she brought me this deal. Said, Britt, let's do it. And I'm gonna do it. Of course, it's an amazing, cash flowing, already profitable boutique hotel in Belize. So we want to host events there. It's already staffed. The staff are incredible too. Mm-hmm. And the food is amazing because actually the head chef, he won the equivalent of, I guess, Top Chef in America in Belize. So it's just like incredible food, amazing people, a really cool spot. So 16 units now, but we're expanding with 6 more tree houses in the back. So there's a little combo of tree houses and then just a bank of rooms on the beach as well.
I love that. Before we dig into that deal, I know you're doing a lot of self-storage stuff as well. What are you doing in the self-storage space? Yeah,
so self-storage. So AJ Osborne, he's my partner in it. He's been doing it for 20 years. And we actually met at a mastermind that Brandon Turner, he was the old host of the Bigger Pockets podcast, but he hosted a mastermind in Maui in 2019. So that's where I met AJ and a whole bunch of incredible people that I partner with actually today. So that meetup really changed the direction of everything for me because at that time in 2019, I was still buying single family homes. Mm-hmm. But then I realized after meeting all these people with these huge portfolios that I was doing it kind of all on my own. It was slow. And if I wanted to scale, I really had to either partner and build my team and get into commercial real estate. So that was really when I changed directions. But I started working with AJ, actually, I think it was probably 2020, 2021, around that time. But I was buying my own self-storage in Canada.
Okay.
So I got this facility under contract. I was really excited about it. And then I was actually looking for a capital partner. So I put it out there on social media. Hey, and I, at that time, had no faith in myself because I was doing single family homes for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think anyone would want to partner with me on a self-storage facility. I just thought that's way out of left field. I haven't talked about self-storage much before. But I got 300 responses off of one Instagram story.
Wow.
I'm like, wow. So I started building up this investor list. And so that's where I kind of came into play with AJ Osborne and Cedar Creek Capital, because I would raise money for them. I'd work on their marketing side and build up that whole division of the company, which was really cool.
I love that. And I can resonate a little bit with that because when I went to go do the first boutique hotel, it was like it was a new thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Up until that point, I'd only done multifamily and short-term rentals. So like you go to raise money, I'm like, well, I don't know how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But that particular raise on the first hotel, it literally filled up in 24 hours. And it was like literally the quickest raise I've ever done. And there was like a lot of folks that couldn't get in that wanted to get in.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I would say a lot of that is because, you got your brand, social media, you got a following. Which makes a lot of things easier. But also to your point, a lot of people when they get in the commercial space, they think they got to know it all. But it's like, no, you just have to bring one aspect to the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're good at raising money. Maybe you're good at underwriting. Maybe you're good at finding and sourcing these deals. Or maybe you're good at operating, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't need to bring it all. So what are you doing specifically with the self-storage stuff? Like what's your role specifically?
So I raise capital. I bring deals to as well. And that's all done through my social media, my networks, all of that. So I really work on the team in a lot of different areas, but because you can't just raise capital and get paid for it, you have to have substantial other duties on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So I work a lot even with Cedar Creek on their marketing side, building up their list, bringing in deals, and even building up AJ's personal brand as well with podcast guests and a whole bunch of different stuff.
I love that. Okay.
So that's where I like to be. I kind of like to be the top of the funnel. I like to bring people together to these incredible deals. And I don't want to be the operator of them. And I have my own deals up in Canada that I own on my own, 2 multifamilies and some single families as well. But I just realized through partnering that I love being on a team and working with incredible operators who are great at what they do.
I love that. I saw on your Instagram story like a couple weeks back, like one of your multifamilies back home, the balconies fell off. What was that all about?
Yeah, this driver just lost control. I still don't have the police report, but I think I don't know exactly what happened, but lost control, smashed into my 120-year-old building. It's this beautiful, historic multifamily 15-unit building. And so, just lost control.
Drunk?
We don't know
yet.
You don't know.
Hopefully.
I'm still getting the report, but
hopefully someone didn't do that sober.
Yeah, I know. It's super weird. So I'm here and then that happens there. But that's why you have a great team to be able to handle that stuff when things happen. Because in real estate, as we all know, it never goes how we plan it. Things and challenges always come up. But I think just expecting stuff to happen, you get way better at just solving problems as they come along. I think it gets way easier.
That's such a good point. I feel like every deal does not go as planned. There's always going to be things that you overlooked or hurdles that you're going to have to overcome, but it's like how you handle those hurdles. And then each time you handle a new one and overcome it, you gain more and more confidence. I had someone recently, this was like the first time someone's ever died at one of my properties, but there was like it was one of my Cincinnati multifamily deals. It's a C-class deal. It's in more of like a blue collar type of area. And one of the units was being turned and they were like releasing it out, but it was vacant for like a couple weeks. And in those couple weeks, like a homeless person like broke into the unit and was like living there. And I guess they showed up like a few days after the fact, but it was like this reeking smell coming out of the unit. So they went in there and there was like a dead body. And I guess this person had been dead for like 3 or 4 days. Which is crazy. And so then, insurance and all this sort of stuff. But, to your point, it's like you can't plan for everything.
You can't plan it. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is they're trying to plan out all these scenarios. You're never going to know what's going to happen. So you have to just be okay working within the unknown. And that's what real estate is. So I think a lot of people want to have all the answers and they want this ideal perfect scenario, and it's never going to happen that way. I've never had a deal that's gone exactly how I thought it was going to.
For sure. What do you guys own portfolio wise in the self-storage space?
So I am a part of around 600,000 square feet across 8 different states. So
that's how you guys measure it. It's not like units or anything like that. It's square footage.
Well, just on my hat, it's kind of hard because as a part of, we started doing syndications at first, and then I started raising for a fund. So I'm part of the general partnership and own just a percentage of these deals. So it's like a huge number, but then I only own a percentage of it.
Yeah.
So
I love the fund model. We just launched ours earlier this year. And so your guys' fund specifically is only in self-storage. I love that. And how long has the fund been open?
Well, we're closed now. There's 2. So I was a part of Fund 1, and now there is Fund 2 going on. And it's been good, but deals have been a little bit more slow this year compared to the past.
Just finding like good deals that come loose. Yeah. So everyone, knows you as Investor Girl Britt, and you got, your brand and social media. How old were you when you started like putting out content on social?
24. So I had a mentor tell me, because I already owned 3 properties. And then at that time, I wasn't aware of the whole podcasting world and all these books and stuff. I just own a few on my own. And I thought, I really want to go in this direction, but I had no idea how I was going to do that. So I got my certificate to be a power engineer. And so I did that for 6 months. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is
what is a
horrible.
power engineer?
So I was working in industrial facilities. I was actually working at a laundromat, an industrial laundromat. So I was out there fixing these huge laundry machines and all this different stuff. It was like a really weird job. So I'm in coveralls in the trenches, 9 to 5. Well, actually it was 40 hours a week, but I worked 4 10-hour shifts. And then I'd drive to my rental properties on the weekend. So I'd finish that 10-hour shift on the Friday, drive out to the property 4 hours away, sleep in my van, renovate, go home. Like, this is my life.
Wow. So, how did you even get into like the fix and flip stuff? Like, what was you mentioned you had a mentor, but like, how did that come to fruition?
Yeah. So I bought my first house when I was 18. It was a $25,000 house, made $900 rent. So I'm like, simple math, back of the napkin, did not know how to analyze a deal, didn't understand the expenses or any of that. But I knew that, okay, this house is going to be paid off in a few years. So that kind of works out.
Right.
Let's go with that. So I was in a small town, nowhere close to where I was living, but I'd drive out and just make it happen because I knew I wanted to own property. Because my huge goal was that I didn't want a boss. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted this income coming through real estate, and that's as far as I really knew. And then my big goal when I was 24 was to make $10,000 a month and then never work again and just hang out on the beach. But things change, and you realize after meeting people who are similar to you that it's more about the growth than anything. It's like making these accomplishments, and it's very rewarding, I think, being in real estate and the people that you meet through it as well.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because when I first got into real estate, I was like listening to a lot of Bigger Pockets like podcasts, and they always like hype up the passive income and like financial freedom. And so I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, if I can just get $10,000 a month in passive income,
retire forever.
That's equivalent to like making a couple $100,000 at a W-2 after taxes, right? And I thought, I'd have enough to just quit my job and go live on the beach and just hang out. And then once I reached it, I was like, I had a little bit of freedom for a little bit, but I was like, I got bored so quickly.
You get bored super
and
quick.
I just started going crazy. I was like, I got to get back to it. But to your point, like, I didn't realize this until, a couple of years ago, but like what makes me happy is growth and progress. So like happiness stems from growth and progress for me. And I think a lot of folks too, and maybe some folks don't realize it, but the second I'm not growing and the second I stop progressing, that's the second I'm like no longer happy. It's like the weirdest thing. But as long as I'm growing and progressing, like I can go through all sorts of ups and downs and like I'm still happy. Like I'm still having a good time. I'm enjoying it. And it makes all these things that we do as like entrepreneurs and real estate investors, like, solving problems and putting out fires left and right. It makes all that stuff worth it because ultimately that's what creates the growth, is being uncomfortable. If you love real estate investing, passive income, and tax benefits, but don't have the time, my company, Summers Capital, is buying boutique hotels right now. We source the deals, we renovate the properties, and we even handle all the day-to-day management, making it truly hands-off for our investors. If you want to learn more to see if we can help you, visit summerscapital.com/invest to book a call with our team. Again, that's summerscapital.com/invest. Now back to the show.
Yeah, for sure. And I think including other people in the picture as well. Because I was always thinking, I think really selfishly, because I was only ever thinking about myself, like, okay, I'll do this and then I'll retire and then that's it.
Yeah.
But it's only focused on me. But when I started including my family and other people, that's when I started to see a bigger picture. But when you're in that survival state, it's just kind of like you're working your ass off just to get to that number, whatever that is. But you don't really realize how much bigger it is. But I think it's just that survival until you can quit the 9-to-5 kind of thing. That's the big goal. But then once that happens, you've grown so much as a person that you're like, let's keep this going.
Yeah. There's always like another level,
Always.
And I think about the folks that are like above me that I kind of like look up to. Those folks have another level of folks that they look up to as well, And so I don't know if the game ever stops, but, with the residential stuff, you started doing the fix and flip, you started putting out content. Did your content just start firing like right off the bat, or did you do it for a while before it started to grow?
No. So what I was saying before too, that mentor, he told me, Britt, you have to do something to create credibility for yourself, because eventually you're going to need outside capital. You're going to need people to help you grow your portfolio. So he said, start a newsletter or start a blog. And I did that. And it was called Little Investments on the Prairie. And so it was just these tiny houses. And I would write about the properties I was buying and put out the blog. And I hated doing that because I'm not a writer. I like photos and videos and all that visual stuff. So when it really started to work was when I was doing the renovation. So I'd do like all this kind of stuff. I could rip down walls, install flooring, tile, all of that. So it started to really work once I time-lapsed my renovation work. And I think just because it was something so different then too. But it took a long...
before and afters too.
Yeah, because it's this transformation. So I think with social media, it is it has to be storytelling in some way. And that could be you as an individual, as a person, or it can be through renovations or whatever it is. People love to see that progress and transformations. So that could look a lot of different ways, but it really worked for me with the renovation side of things. And I love it too. It was so fun for me.
Yeah. You definitely put out some really cool content. And I think, like you said, people love those transformations, the before and afters, especially if you take like an ugly property and then make it beautiful. For a listener out there that maybe, is hesitant to start putting out content on social media, maybe they think that they're too early to the game, and maybe they don't have the experience yet on the real estate side to start putting out content. But they know they should get started. What kind of like tips would you give them in order to kind of get in the game and get more comfortable talking?
So I think people love to see real and raw. And even if you're just starting, you could say, hey, this is how terrible my cold call went today. Or you could talk about the struggles or the wins as well. Like, hey, I had a great call today with an owner and I just got off the phone. You could talk about that, do Instagram stories. I love Instagram. That's where I built a lot of my base, but there's a lot of different mediums as well, like LinkedIn and Twitter, if you like writing more than you like photos, videos, all that. But I think building a connection is the most important thing. So you want to build that like, know, trust factor with your people. And then that's how you're able to raise capital like you and I have done. And it's shocking when you do it, right? And that was the same for me. My first raise was 1.1 million and it was one email blast and I raised it like in a few hours. And I just couldn't, it was so shocking to me, but I realized through that you are building real connections, which is funny because it's one-sided. You're talking to your phone and people feel like they're having a conversation with you, but you're building a lot of trust with people. And I think there's an extent of showing all sides of it. It doesn't have to be so polished. I think people connect more with the reality of it anyway. So,
well, a perfect example is like we met last night at the hotel, but before the meetup. And the first thing you said to me is like, "Hey, great to meet you. I feel like I already know you." And I said,
exactly,
"I feel like I know you as
right?
well," because of social media, which is crazy. But also like I feel like you can engage with your audience and respond to comments and the DMs and all that sort of stuff. So it is engaging.
Yeah, for sure.
But it makes so much stuff just so much easier, and things that you don't even imagine. It's not just raising capital. It's like the ability to get lending, the ability to source good deals. Growing a team, like so many things become a lot easier. You get more opportunities and all that, which is cool. And then to your point, it's like maybe you don't want to talk on camera, and that's okay. Like you can literally write Twitter posts, and you can put those out on Twitter, and then you can basically screenshot them, put them out on Instagram as well, which those do good, and those are easy. It takes 5 seconds to come up with something.
And I think a great way to build connections with people that you're listening to, and what I was always doing, probably from the beginning, I was listening to Bigger Pockets, and then I'd tag the host of the podcast, and I'd tag the people who are speaking, and I would actually go and take the points that I was learning from those podcasts and say, "Hey, I learned this from this podcast. The speaker is amazing," and I'd tag them, and then they'd really appreciate that. Then they'd reshare it to their page, and I'd build a relationship with them, and that's how I got on Bigger Pockets podcast, which was, I think that was around 2019 as well. But that's where a lot changed for me, because after getting on that podcast, my audience grew from around 30,000 people to 60,000 overnight with that one podcast. And I just made some really cool connections, and it started to change my way of thinking as well, just because of the people I was now associated with.
I love that. Yeah, I listened to a lot of Bigger Pockets podcasts when I was like early on in my journey. But I got to be honest with you, like as soon as Brandon Turner left, I haven't listened to one episode.
Yeah, you'd like to hear that. I'm sure.
I haven't met Brandon yet, but I've been like connected to him a couple times via email, but we've yet to meet. So how many homes did you flip before you got into the commercial stuff?
13 units.
Okay.
So a few of those are duplexes, but kept them all. Did the refinance strategy, so didn't sell any of them.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so kept all those, but then what really was a huge change for me was taking over my first apartment building, because it doubled my income and portfolio overnight with one deal. So I was building up these 13 single family homes, and then I bought one apartment complex that was 14 units, and then the light bulb just went off. Wow, this is as easy as buying a single family home, but now I just bought 14.
Yeah.
So that was a huge game changer for me.
The lending is almost like easier with like a larger property.
It is. And that's one thing that was kind of shocking for me too, because it was it still is a difficult process. I was looking for an apartment complex for 2 years before I took one over, just because I think it was more holding myself back too, of fear. It's always this fear thing that we're so worried that if something goes wrong and this is such a big deal. To me, I was buying $25,000 to $50,000 houses, these small things, and then buying a $1 million property to me at the time was just insane. So I've grown a lot. Now I don't even think about a number. It could be a $20 million deal, and it's just, if the numbers work, it works.
Yeah. I can resonate with that. I feel like the first deal I did, I cashed out my 401k to buy it, and like everyone told me that it was too risky. And they outlined all the risks. And so I was like scared, and then I did it. I got a little confidence. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I got a little confidence, and then I did the next one, and that was scary. And then I did the next one, and that was scary. And now, like looking back, a lot of those early deals, they don't make me like scared at all. But then, I'm doing stuff today that I'm like, oh, like this is like, it's pushing my comfort zone a little bit, but it's like you said, it's good. It's a growth. I'm curious, what makes you, is there anything that you're scared of today?
That's a good question. I don't know if I feel scared of anything necessarily, because especially with the partnerships that I have, I really trust the operators that I'm working with. So, and you go through so many problems and issues like we were talking about, where you just become comfortable with these problems. So, I mean, there's always something. I'll try to think of something, but.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like we have these networks of like folks in our network, whether it's masterminds, and there's masterminds out there for all sorts of stuff, but just our networks alone, it's like you have the confidence that if something arises that you're not familiar with, well, you have the network to go to, and they've probably seen that before. But I think like for me, I believe like with just my experience, the number one factor or key to, a successful entrepreneur really is having the ability to go out and take a little bit of risk, and having the confidence to know that, hey, when things go wrong, and they will go wrong, that you have the ability and you have the wherewithal and the resources to come up with a solution and get through that hurdle. And I think the more times you do that over and over, the more confidence you get. And then it allows you to take more risks where people think, oh, that's risky. But to you, it's not risky because you've done it over and over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that risk thing, it actually reminded me because someone at our meetup yesterday was telling me that he found a really great deal. It was a 4-plex and it was a few years ago, and he really wanted to buy it, but then backed out because everyone around him was saying, don't do it. Like it's too risky. And now it's worth 3 times the price. So it was one of those things where you have to be really careful who you're getting your information from. Like, are they where you want to be? Because if they're not where you want to be, why are you listening to their advice? So
it's so good.
I think that's a important thing to really consider, because the thing is too, your friends and family, they are looking out for you. They're not doing it because they're trying to like push you down. They actually are concerned, and they are worried about risk, and it's to protect you. It's not anything bad. I think it's just their view of it is one way. So
it's such an important takeaway. I feel like a lot of folks, and I see this too, like at our meetups in San Diego, exactly what you mentioned. Like folks will be like, hey, like I want to do a deal. And then, 6 months goes by and they were all excited at one point. And then you talk to them and like, oh, my family member talked me out of it, or my spouse, I couldn't get my spouse on board. And it's really her call. It's a shame because, to your point, it's like a lot of these folks, they haven't done it before. So you might go to your parents and be, hey, I'm going to buy this 10-unit multifamily deal. And they might say like, that's way too big. That's too risky. That's over your head, and outline all the risks. But then you go to like a mastermind group, right, that buys multifamily, and they're going to tell you, hey, you're thinking too small. You need to get something bigger. Yeah. And so it's all mind shift and perspective. What has been your favorite deal today?
Every deal I do has been really cool. I mean, the Belize project is amazing. So that's been a really fun one because I love design. I really love all of that, and my multifamilies as well. It's really cool just to think up the renovations and how we're going to make this an amazing property. And then at the same time, I love self-storage because it's a business. So it's all about the business operations and being able to turn that around. And that's a creative thing too. So the deals that are really creative and thinking outside the box, like this deal, good deals aren't just going to fall in your lap. You have to be creative and figure out what can I do to make this deal work, instead of just thinking that a deal is just going to be amazing, right? Fall right in your lap. So I think the creativity behind real estate is amazing. And every deal I've done, my single family homes taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of problem solving skills. I had to figure out how to, tile a shower in a way that's not going to like flood anything, and make sure I'm doing all these things correctly. And it was a lot of different problem solving skills that I learned through that. And actually I made a lot of connections through Instagram. So I'd go look up Tyler in the search bar and just find a person who looked like they were great, a contractor that was professional. And I'd say, hey, do you mind if I ask you a question? And people were so nice. They would help me with questions, and they would show me what to do. It was really, really cool to meet people through online and to see how many people are willing to help with questions and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even if you get no's, you're asking the wrong person. So just keep asking until you get an answer.
Do you feel like the content is different between these different asset classes? So like putting out content on your Belize boutique hotel versus self-storage, is there a big difference there? Hey guys, real quick, the only way the show grows, the only way we continue to bring on bigger and better guests is if you guys rate, review, and share the show. So if you could take 2 seconds or the click of the thumb to review on Apple or Spotify, it will mean the world to me. But more importantly, we'll be able to reach more entrepreneurs and more real estate investors and help them build wealth through this podcast. Now back to the show.
Oh, Belize is too easy. It's like, hey, we're on the beach and building this cool tree house and storage. I love storage, but it's still a difficult asset class to
market.
Because
is that because it's just not sexy or what?
It's so sexy, but it's still like it's a metal box.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people who I think are on there just because they enjoy seeing the transformation, the renovations, all of that. But I do polls all the time too, which is a nice way to engage and figure out what people want to see. And a lot of the time they vote. I say, do you want to see before and after photos? Do you want to see how to do renovations? Do you want to learn about how to build a real estate investing business? And a lot of the time it's build a real estate investing business. That's the most popular answer.
Interesting.
So it was good to know because I think people do want to know, but then it's like you almost have to promote a lifestyle of what your life could be as a real estate investor, having, this financial freedom, which is never really the case. It's always going to be work. But I think people want to see their lives in that way. So sometimes when you get into the heavy information,
it's too much.
Yeah. So I think just being inspiring in a way to get them to move on it and be like, hey, if you really want this life and being able to travel and not being locked down to a 9-to-5 job, like here's the steps, but you almost have to get them there first to be inspired to do it because it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work, but
yeah, speaking of hard work, so I didn't realize this. So you were like literally doing every single part of the renovation, like the flooring, the shower tiles, like ripping out cabinets, putting in countertops, like literally you were doing every part of it?
All of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you learn how to do all that?
So my mom, when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, my mom had it's like a basement suite because I'm in Canada. So we have basements there to, be below the frost line with all the piping and everything. But anyway, so we all have basements and she wanted to have this income so she could pay her mortgage on this house. So she would get me and my brother to help her with those types of renovations. So she's like, here's a paintbrush, like help me out. So I actually got started really young with that stuff and learning a bit. But until I actually started doing my own properties, that's when I learned the most because you get thrown into the deep end and then you just have to figure it out.
What's your mom's name?
Linda.
Shout out Linda. So because Linda was throwing you guys paintbrushes, it built this entire like real estate journey for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is crazy. What's it like buying real estate in Canada? Like is the lending up there a little bit different than the US?
Yeah, I would say lending's different. There's all these differences. And I remember, this is a different example, but I was listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad as I was doing my renovations. And then I heard him talk about 1031 exchange. I'm like, oh, that is so awesome. That's so cool. And then I call my dad to talk to him about it because he's an accountant. He's like, that doesn't exist in Canada. And I'm like, oh no. But that's the thing. I learned so much from some American podcasts, all this different information. And then when something doesn't match up, I just, move on to the next. People get really caught up in details, I think. But if it's out of my control, there's nothing you could do about it. So you have to figure out another way. But
yeah, there's always another way. But I was just curious, like, what does the lending look like up there? So from a 1031 exchange perspective, you guys don't have that up there. And then what about like interest rate and all that stuff? Is that pretty equivalent to what we see here?
It's equivalent. I mean, I would honestly have to go look because these are the things that I don't need to even know at this point because I'm not buying in Canada right now. And the funny thing is, like we were talking about with social media and being someone that attracts deals and capital to you, that's what really is built through social media because I haven't looked for a deal since 2019. It was these deals are coming to me, like the self-storage stuff, the boutique hotel that was brought to me, my apartment building in Canada that I bought, that was brought to me. All this stuff just happens. So I kind of take things as they come along. But it's funny because the first apartment building that I bought, the 14 unit, I got for 1.45% interest rate in 2019.
Is that seller financing?
No, it's a government program. So it's called CMHC backed financing. So there's certain things that you have to do, like stay below a certain rent percentage and like do eco-friendly stuff, like the windows and all that. So, but it wasn't actually too bad. So I was able to do that, stay below where they wanted the rents to be, and it still made a lot of sense. And yeah, so got that for 1.45.
Wow. That's
and then
crazy.
Now my most recent one that I bought this year was 7.5%, I think. So there's quite a difference, but it's the same thing because people get really wrapped up in the interest rates, which makes sense. Like it's ridiculous how much more I'm paying for financing right now, but the numbers still checked out. And as I was going through this deal, I ran it past, his name's Brian Murray. He actually inspired me to get into commercial investing in the first place. He wrote a book called Crushing It in
Commercial Real Estate.
Yeah.
I read that book too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brian's a good friend of mine. He's been just amazing to have because he's always willing to go through a deal with me. And I'm so thankful for that. But as we were going through this deal, I just couldn't decide if it was worth my time because it was a big project, but it was an amazing price. And I did want to do it. But I was a little bit uncertain still because of the financing, the terms, all that stuff. And he said, well, maybe just zoom out. Like, is this deal going to be worth more or less in 10 years? And I thought it's going to be worth way more. And I knew that. And so it made the decision really easy. So I think that's a great practice to do too, just zooming out, because we get so wrapped up in this year, what's that going to look like? And I think that's important to consider. We don't want to be buying, negatively cash flowing if it doesn't make sense. But I think it is a good practice to zoom out that 10-year timeline.
That's so good. I love that. And I think it's always good to look at things from a macro perspective, especially because we get caught up in the day to day. And it's not just doing deals. It's like relationships with people. It's, how you treat other folks. When you play the short game, it's like you make a couple of mistakes and it's not going to take you very far. But some things might cost you more in the short run. But if you look out 5-10 years, that compounded over time, just building all those relationships and doing the right thing, that's going to pay dividends down the road. And I always think about that stuff. I'm always like, okay, how can I play the long game here? That
long-term mindset is so important. And I think that's important too with who you are partnering with or who, your circles. What does that look like? Because I think with AJ and I, that's always what we thought too, is always this long-term mindset. And I wasn't flipping these properties. I was always telling AJ and other mentors in my circle, I'm buying these. At the time, I was buying the single family homes, but I was still buying them because I wanted to hold them long-term, like buy and hold. And that's what my strategy was. And I think being aligned on certain things like that, and you sell when it makes sense, you don't want to keep things that don't make sense, but at the same time, we're the long-term thinking, it's different. So you want to make sure that people who you're partnering with and all of that have the same sort of mindset.
Yeah. I like that piece of advice from Brian. Does Brian still work with Brandon Turner?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure. Gotcha. I need to catch up with everyone. It's been a while, but I do love it really is like a family. It's like a community. Once you start, that's why I love the masterminds and all of that, because you build real friendships and genuine relationships with people. And I think that's, for me, it's more about that than money or anything. It's just building these connections with people and doing cool things together with a community and having a support system, because it's really hard to do it on your own. 100%.
I agree with you. I'm in, I think, 4 masterminds as a member. And then I have our own boutique hotel mastermind, which is great.
We have to do something in Belize. I'm convincing Rich. I'm like, let's do one.
I know. We were talking a little bit last night about it. You're thinking sometime in the spring down in Belize at your new hotel.
So you guys have to come out.
I think that would be fun. I think we should do it. So we're going to do a exclusive retreat for our hotel mastermind. I think we're going to do it in Cabo or Cancun. The team is kind of finalizing the plans now. But I'm down to do another retreat with you. I'm saying it right now. At your Belize hotel. We could just do what are you thinking, 3 nights?
Yeah, let's do that.
Invite a bunch of folks out there and just totally like mastermind for the weekend. I think that'd be really cool.
So fun.
And at your property, which is like even cooler.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's awesome. So I want to get people out there, just hang out, make friends, learn a lot, expand your mind. There's so many things. I learn something new every single time I go to stuff like this. And that's why I'm the same way. I paid, like $150,000 over the last year and a bit just with masterminds, just because I want to grow. It's like, okay, I'm paying $10,000 for a one-day thing with Matty Koshman, but then I got to have dinner with him and his wife Layla and hang out and build a friendship. And to me, it was worth it. It was so fun. But doing stuff like that and just being in the proximity, I think that is very valuable. And it's something that I never would have thought that I would ever want to pay for. I would think that was insane a few years ago.
Well, here's the other thing. I don't know anyone that's just in one mastermind. Like people are either they've never done it before or they're in a bunch. Because once you do one, you're like, oh, like I get it now. You're in this network and you're connected with all these folks that, are bringing different resources to the table. But that's what ultimately helps us grow as entrepreneurs and real estate investors. And so I'm a big fan of it. And it's tax deductible. And you just started your own mastermind not too long ago in the self-storage space. Tell me a little bit about that one.
Yeah. So that's with AJ as well. And that's been super fun because with self-storage and with commercial real estate, it is a team sport. It's great to have people who you can partner with, who you can, have on your team to bring deals, analyze deals, like we have people partnering with each other all the time through that group. And that's my favorite thing about it. So it's all education. We do a call every week on how to find the deal, how to analyze it, all of that. So that's a 6-month program that's online. And I love it because I love seeing people who come together and learn from each other, but then also partner with each other to take down these big storage deals. So it's been super cool to see. I love being able to facilitate that. And we have some awesome people in the group. And I'm so thankful for our team too, who does all the tech. I'm so bad with all the tech, all the stuff, all the online. I'm like, I don't know how that works. So thanks, George and Bree and Jen and everybody. But I think that's been cool for me too, just being able to build a team in the real estate space and then education space. And there's just so much we could do with that. And when you have the right people on your team, it's just feels like anything's possible. Because before I was doing everything on my own with the renovations, property management, like finding the deals, analyzing, doing just everything, bookkeeping, all the stuff that I should definitely not be doing, because it's so time consuming. I procrastinate, I push it off. It's an important thing that has to be done, but procrastination is a good indication for something that you might have to delegate. So
that's so good. I always say, like, if you are at the point where you feel like you're ready to make your first hire and you're like wondering what that job description is going to look like, I always say, like, I don't know where I read this. I read it somewhere, but we use this all the time with our team. So you write down 3 columns. On the far left column, you write down everything that you love doing and you're good at, right? And then in the middle column, you write down things that you're good at, but you don't like doing. And then the far right column is everything that you're not good at and you don't like doing. So that far right column with everything that you're not good at and you don't like doing, all those things that you list in that column, those should be the first things that you delegate out. And eventually you delegate stuff in the middle column. And then eventually, ideally, you're just focusing on your highest and best use and things that you love doing. And so if you can get to that point, you won't get burnt out. But also, like you said, procrastination is the best indicator of delegation. And I totally agree with you. Like, I hate like anything that has to do with like accounting. I'm like, stuff like that. A lot of the admin stuff I don't love doing. But some people love doing that stuff.
Exactly.
Right? I love the art of like sourcing deals. I love the art of like talking to investors and putting out content, stuff like this. I love this kind of stuff, right? But some folks don't. And so you can either partner with other folks that are good at the stuff you don't like doing, or you can start hiring out a team. And before you know it, you'll be focusing just on your highest and best use. And that's really where the growth happens.
Yeah. And I think it's it's a process. It's like a discovery process of figuring out who you are, what you're good at, like you said, what you enjoy doing. And then you just want to be, it's so much better when you are able to focus on that. And I think I never wanted to. And I always thought I'd just be this lone wolf forever and doing everything myself. And I think that was a way that I was brought up to, because it was change your own oil, do everything yourself to save money. So it was always this saver mentality. We want to just be saving and doing it all. But then it was really difficult for me to break out of that too.
Oh,
because
totally.
That was probably the biggest struggle that I've had, just being able to remove myself.
Was Linda like that growing up?
Yes.
Yes.
So we come from a family of farmers and factory workers, and I think then it was just a lot of like, you had to be really, it's more scarce with money. So there wasn't a lot there. There's kids to feed, and you have to like be very careful with finances. And I think it really helped me though with my renovations. I'm great at budgeting. I'm great at sourcing deals. Like I'm really savvy with that. And I think that really helped me get my first properties, because I was able to do renovations super cheap, and I was able to actually do it instead of figuring out how to partner. There's so many other ways, but I didn't know that at the time. So I think it helped me, but then it gets to a point where it ends up hurting you because you can't let go.
Yeah, my parents were like that too. Like my mom to this day, she still tells me like, oh, turn the lights off, or like, save money here when you can, or like, don't go out to eat. Like she still tells me that kind of stuff. And I had a demographer on my podcast. This is a while back, but he wrote the book Big Shifts Ahead. And he labels all the generations based on like the decade you were born. And so my parents were born in the 40s. And he labels that generation the savers, because they grew up watching their parents kind of get rocked by the Great Depression and all that sort of stuff. And so that generation, for whatever it's worth, just saved all their money in kind of the scarcity mindset, make some money and then hold on to it, stuff it under the mattress type of thing. And my parents are like totally like that, right? And I think there was a point in time to where you could stick money in the bank and like you would get a decent rate of return in the savings account. But in today's age, it's like, your money's dissolving and deteriorating just because of the rate of inflation. And so that's why it's important now, more important than ever, to, learn how to invest and get your money to work for you.
Yeah. And that's such a good point. And I think just digging into why we are the way that we are, like because it's a part of our upbringing. It's part of the culture we were brought into. And then trying to be like, is that actually what's going to get me to where I want to go? Or do I have to shift and change and evolve as a person? But it's not easy to do. But I think that's why getting around other people who think differently, and you could feel that connection, I think, when you know, okay, this is actually the way that I want to go. It's not just because I'm scared or I was brought up this way and that's how I was programmed. I think breaking free of that is really difficult, but a really important process.
It's such an important process. I feel like today, like the more, and I was never like this, right? I had to like break through and like continue to train myself to be this way. But the more I give and the more I put out there, the more I get,
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, it's not giving with expectation that you're going to get back. It's like giving without the expectation for anything in return.
Yeah.
And just doing the right thing. And I think over time it compounds and it compounds. And next thing you look back and you're like, whoa, like I built this thing, which is pretty cool. But I look at the inflation all the time and it's scary. So $100,000 40 years ago in 1983 has the same purchasing power as $293,000 today.
Wow.
So if your parents made $100,000 40 years ago, you would have to make $293,000 in 2023 today just to have the same purchasing power adjusted for inflation. Like think about that. And so that whole concept of stuffing your money under the mattress, it's not going to work.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just really, and that's why I love real estate investing, because you can make those returns. And I like my money in the ground. It's like, I can see it. It's tangible. I understand it. I'm not like the crypto and all this other stuff.
Gosh.
There's so many ways, but I think real estate just feels safe to me, even though there is obviously a lot of risk to real estate investing, but at the same time, I feel it's a pretty safe bet in a lot of ways.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like if you look at, traditional society tells us like, go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a job, play it safe, diversify, invest in your 401k, invest in Wall Street. And that's what investing is. It's investing in Wall Street, stocks. But they don't teach you to invest in real estate. And to your point, it's like when you buy stocks, like what are you investing in? Like you're basically buying a ticker symbol on a computer screen. Like what is it? Is it tangible? No, it's not tangible. And you literally have zero control whether it goes up or down. I think Warren Buffett says like the best stock investors are the ones that like buy stocks and then they forget that they even have them. And they come back 20 years later and all of a sudden it's like worth a lot of money. But sometimes these companies go to zero. Like literally think about Kodaks, the Kodaks of the world, the Blackberries of the world. Like those companies, they boom and then they bust because technology is just, always improving and improving. But, to your point, real estate, it's like tangible. It's a real thing. Like these buildings are going to be around a lot longer than I'm going to be around. And think about the office that we have back in San Diego. That building is 120 years old. It was built to manufacture like industrial stuff back in the day. And they would like load it up on the trains and then down at the ships down in San Diego. And now the thing is like literally an office space. And we got a podcast studio there. So that building is going to be around for generations and generations, still making money today,
so cool.
Even though it was built for something else. And so I think I say all this in that, real estate is not like all these stocks and like companies that you invest in. They don't boom and bust. It's evergreen. There's never going to be replacement for two things: a place for people to sleep and a place for people to store their belongings.
Yes. Storage.
Yeah, I know.
Multifamily.
Yes.
That's true.
So as a female entrepreneur and real estate investor, I'm curious, what other women out there like inspire you along the way? Like, because I look up to like 4 or 5 people even today. And those 4 or 5 people are constantly evolving. But I'm just curious, like along your journey, like who were some of those woman entrepreneurs that you kind of were inspired by?
I'd 100% say my mom,
Linda.
Shout out. Because she had businesses and they weren't successful, and then she would change her way and then do something else. And I think she was just really risk adverse. She's like, let's just do it. Let's see what happens. And she was really brave in that way. And I think that gave me the most confidence to just get out there and do it. So I would say my mom, and then there's so many others, but she's number one for sure.
I love that.
So then, but there's some incredible, real estate investors, and it's just, I'm so thankful for my circle and male, female, whoever it is, but there's so many people to look up to that are good people, and there's a lot of people who aren't. So it's just, you have to be careful who you're listening to.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And I always, for the folks out there, I always say like pick 4 or 5 people that inspire you and that you can resonate with. And like I study those folks, and I see what they do. I see how they talk. And I think like you could simple a lot of things in life down to really just, figure out the person that you're trying to become and start acting like that person. It's not rocket science trying to go from point A to point B. You just do the actions required to become point B. So for example, if you want to get in really good shape, and you want to have 6-pack abs and you want to be ripped and jacked, well, go find someone that is ripped and jacked at the gym and start doing the daily routines that they do. So that's probably going to the gym every morning, getting a good workout in, eating the right things, taking care of your body, getting proper sleep. And if you do those things over, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, you're going to look back and be like, whoa, like I'm in really good shape. And so same thing with real estate investing, like figure out who you're trying to become and start acting like that person.
Well, and I think there's so much power in that and acting like them. And then there's also a way to hack that too, which is hiring them to teach you exactly how to. So it's like, that was very helpful for me with the fitness journey as well, because I would hire a personal trainer and then I was scared of the gym for so long. I'm like, I'm just going to be a runner and just run 5K every day. And that was pretty much all I did. But once I started wanting to lift weights and all that, hiring a trainer helped me make that progress so much faster than if I was just out there trying to figure it out on my own. So I think doing that and then you could do it on your own later. You don't have to have a trainer forever. So I think it's important just to get the ball rolling, and the faster you could do that, the better. Because otherwise it's just going to stay on your list of, I should be getting out there lifting weights. And then it just stays like that forever, but it's that procrastination, which at that point you have to hire it out and bring a professional in.
I saw a post the other day and it really resonated with me, but it said, you can have 1,000 problems until you have a health problem. And then you just have one problem. And it really resonated with me because, all these things that we do as real estate investors and entrepreneurs, none of that stuff matters if you don't have your health. And so I would say this year at age 38, I've really learned the importance of like taking care of your body, going to the gym, eating the right things, and just really taking care of your stuff because you're playing the long game. And, I see a lot of people in the space today that, a lot of them are in really good shape. So I think there is an alignment of interest with your, taking good care of your business, you're taking good care of your body, like everything kind of goes full circle. And I just don't want to be that person that's like, okay, like I'm only focused on real estate and growing a business, but I'm not going to take care of my body. I don't want to be that person.
Well, and I think that probably that happened to me too, where I was so focused on real estate and that's all I did. It was 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, every day renovating these properties because I needed to get them done. It was like this survival mode of I only could see one thing. I was so blinded by everything else. But then it's true, once you start to see the repercussions of that and treating your body poorly and not doing the right thing, like even living in the renovations was terrible for my health. Like it was disgusting living in these old properties and the dirt and the dust and all that stuff that I just wasn't taking care of myself. But then I think it's something that I'm super focused on now as well. And it says a lot about a person too who is healthy and shape because it's a lot of work to go to the gym every day. And it shows that you're able to just, sustain that and be, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just very consistent. Discipline. That was the word I was looking for. So to show that discipline, to be in really good shape, like you could tell physically that person has good discipline because of that.
And it's like the first impression. It's the first thing you see when you meet someone. You shake their hand. It's like, okay, you notice. Like if someone takes care of their body, it's like, whoa, and they're disciplined to your point. But I also saw an article which is kind of scary recently, and it said the average life expectancy for like males traditionally, I think most recently was like 77 and some change. I think for women it's like 78, if I'm not mistaken. And this article said that for men, it's actually down to like 72 years old now, which is crazy. So somehow there's like 5 years knocked off of it. For women, I believe it's still 78. But think about that as man, because I think about it all the time. I always say like the best way to measure how much time we have left is to measure the number of months that we have left. And so if you average life expectancy is 77, I'm 38, I have like literally like 468 months left. And so when you think about it in that light, it makes a lot of decisions a lot easier. It makes it easier to take action, because at a certain point, you're going to get to that age to where it's like, you stop caring what people think about you. And that's when people actually start living their life for them and not for other people. Yeah,
that's such a good point. And I think keeping that in mind, we don't think about it often enough. And that these things don't matter. I would always get so caught up in problems or, these details of stuff that it doesn't matter. If it's not going to matter in the next 5 years, don't let it bother you for 5 minutes. I can't remember who said that, but I really liked that because it's so true. And I would be up at night about tenant problems or something a comment online, something that just bothered me so much. But now if it doesn't matter in 5 years, don't let it bother you for 5 minutes. I love that. I try to stick to that, but it's a practice as well.
What's it like living in a van?
It's amazing. It's not as it's funny because with the van life stuff, it's on social media. People do that for fun. And that's what I actually wanted to do. I wanted to renovate an old school bus. I bought one and that was the plan, renovate the school bus and just travel around and be a nomad. And then I realized it wasn't for me at a certain point.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I really was so determined to not have a boss and not have to work that 9 to 5.
At the laundromat?
At the laundromat. in my coveralls. Yeah. So I just really was so motivated by that. I would do whatever it took to make it happen. So I am thankful for that because I had a really strong vision of what I wanted. And that was not to have a boss, just to have this travel lifestyle where I could have a little bit of freedom, which sometimes I want to have that stability now. But at the same time, I always like to be able to travel, do cool stuff. And that really drove me. So living in the van was fine.
It was a good time.
It was cold, but
I don't know if I could ever do it. I guess like push come to shove, I'd be willing to do it, but I enjoy a little bit of space.
Yeah. You're bougie. Yeah, I get that too.
I don't think I always like love nice things, but I think like as I grow, like, you know, if I have the option to like sleep in a comfortable bed, I'm going to choose a comfortable bed, you know?
Well, actually that's a good point because you should do stuff that, because at that time I still feel this in a little bit of a way, but I say I don't need it. I'm like, I'm fine living in my little apartment or sleeping in my van. I'm like, I don't need anything more. It's fine. But until I actually did it, I'm like, wow, this is actually awesome. Flying first class, doing stuff like that, it just gets you thinking a little bit differently. And you don't necessarily need that stuff, but it's something that is a little bit of a driver as well.
It is. And then every time you go do that nice thing, like fly first class, for example, that's a good one. That becomes the new baseline, you know? And I don't know, I started flying first like maybe a year ago, and now I always, if I can, I'll fly first. And the reason I do it is not just because it's like, you know, you first one on the plane, first one off, and like you get, you know, everything's a little bit more taken care of and more comfy. But really it's like the networking too, you know, like That's a good point. I've met potential investors. I've met like high level people sitting in first, where in the back I might not meet those same folks. And so that's another point too. And so you think about the cost of like, you know, the extra cost of getting a first class ticket, but if you meet that one investor that ends up investing $250,000, well, then it was worth it, right? Or you meet that one person sitting next to you that has this opportunity, and you end up doing business with them, then it makes it worth it, right? And so I don't know. I look at things in that light as well.
Yeah, and even I was staying at the one hotel in Miami on South Beach, and I met the most amazing people because it's a really beautiful hotel, super fancy. I'm like, this is so fun. But then you get to meet people at the lobby bar or just sitting, you know, I do my calls, and then all of a sudden I hear someone say, oh, we have 40 million in equity in this apartment deal. I'm like, who is that? And so then I go make connections with them. So I think that's a really good point that I wouldn't have thought about. And the other thing I was thinking of is it gets to a point where you have to value your time in certain things too. Because I would fly for 30 hours if it would save me like $200. I'm like, instead of half the time, because I would just always choose whatever the cheapest option was for whatever it was. That's just how, you know, again, how I was raised. So I think once I started to understand the value of my time, which I always valued at minimum wage before, because I was working as a server for like 6 years. I think that was always my job. So that was a minimum wage job with tips. It was awesome. I thought I was like making it with the tips and all that, but I still would always do the job. I would always clean my properties. I'd do every single job there was to do because I just valued my time at the lowest possible thing. But now I value my time at thousands an hour. So then I want to be very careful about how I'm spending my time.
Yeah, it's I agree with you. And I used to be the same way. I mean, my mom to this day, like I said, still harps on me to like save money where I can. But to your point, I mean, I always try to take the direct flight if I can. And I don't care what time it is. It's like, okay, I will always take that direct flight because one, it's going to save all the time. But two, I feel like when you have the connecting flights, it adds another layer of like something that could go wrong, right? Like your first flight could be delayed and then you miss the connecting flight and now you're stuck in this layover for 24 hours, right? And that could ruin your entire trip. Or if you check luggage, I don't check luggage because I've had luggage go missing multiple times.
You've had terrible. Right before my big conference last year.
Really?
I was speaking. No, it was one that AJ and I hosted together. Okay. So it was a commercial real estate conference out in Boise. And all my stuff, because I was hosting the event, And so I have all my sparkle stuff because I always wear sparkle outfits to my events and stuff. I made it a branding kind of thing. Not today. I should have worn my sparkles.
Yeah, you always
today,
have a little flair going on.
Something.
Yeah.
Today I was
strategic?
like, yeah, it is, because once I actually bought this is kind of going way off track, but I bought a sparkle outfit as a joke for my 30th birthday, because every year at our ski hill, there's a competition where you go down the hill and go off of a jump into like this water, like this pond. And so you're supposed to skim across the water. So I bought this sparkle outfit just as a joke and went down and had my 30th birthday balloons and then went down.
That is too funny.
And then went into the pond. And then after that, I had this sparkly, crazy sequin outfit, but I wore the pants to a conference.
Oh my gosh.
Later on, because I posted the reel of me snowboarding on Instagram. Okay. And then this sparkly thing kind of came around. So I wore it to this conference. And I went to a few conferences too where no one knew who I was, but everyone thought I was speaking because of just the way I was presenting myself.
Yeah.
And then they would recognize me and always say the sparkly girl. And then they see me at a conference and a few months later be like, oh, I remember you. So it's something too where you have something that does stand out, or it is kind of a branded thing. People have something to say to. They just want sometimes they just need an easy point for a conversation. Like cool pants. Yeah. And it seems simple, but it actually makes a big difference when it comes to networking and stuff like that.
Yeah, I always feel like if you can stand out a little bit, whether it's like the way you dress or like just the way you look or do your hair, you're gonna get an edge over the folks that just look very vanilla. And so I think I get to your point. I think it's a good thing. Like look at Alex Ramosi. Like he's always wearing the beater and the Crocs. Ryan Pineda's always dyeing his hair, and so. I think it's not a bad thing to look a little bit different than the average person.
Yeah. And especially online on social media, you just want something recognizable and even like a color. Because I have a friend who he works as a realtor, and he has a purple, his name's Mike Sherrard.
Okay.
But he has this purple color that's everything. All his cars are this, like his Lambos are this royal purple. And then sometimes I'll see a royal purple car or something like that, and I'll think of him. I'm like, that's cool. If you could just be reminded. And that's same with the self-storage.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Just having something that people think about you. Because if someone sees a self-storage deal for sale and they know that I'm self-storage, I'm always like top of mind, then they'll bring that deal to you. So I think that's really important too.
I love that. So you just moved from Canada down to Miami.
Well, not technically. I'm still like visitor.
Okay.
You know,
you've been here long enough to where it's like, okay, you're here at least from a midterm perspective.
For sure.
What is your vision moving forward? Are you going to stay here long term, or what are you thinking?
Well, I think I'm going to spend some time in Belize this winter.
Really?
So whoever wants to visit, you could come along. We'll do a meetup and all that there too. But I think that'll be a cool spot to be a little bit over the winter. And then we'll see what happens. Life is so crazy. You never know what's going to happen. So.
Yeah, I love that. People always ask me like, oh, what's your 5-year goal? What's your 10-year vision? And I'm like,
see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah. Like the real estate we buy, I'm thinking we're underwriting to 10 years, right? And obviously that's important. But, on a personal level, it's like, I'm not thinking 10 years out. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because what I think I want 10 years from now is going to be different when I get there. And if it's not different, that means that I'm not growing. And so for me, I'm really only looking a year out. And so we're in November right now. Thanksgiving was last, 2 days ago? Was it only 2 days ago? Yeah, it was only 2 days ago. That's crazy. But I'm thinking 2024. I'm like kind of goal setting and that sort of stuff right now. But outside of that, like what happens in 2025 on a personal level, like, I don't know. I'll worry about it when I get there.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And we'd never expect to be where we're at today 5 years ago. So it's really hard to imagine where we're going to be in 5 years from now.
That's so good. 5 years ago, I was working as an air traffic controller, and real estate investing wasn't even on the radar. And then think about where I'm at today. And so when you look at it in that light, it's like a 5-year goal doesn't really mean anything.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
We have no idea.
Yeah. What were you doing 5 years ago?
5 years ago, I mean, I guess I was still investing. I was doing like single family homes. I'm trying to remember what I was doing. See, I forget.
You were living in the van.
I was living in a van, trying to make it happen.
Yeah.
And here we are. I never, ever would have pictured where I'm at today, though. Truly. I just never would have thought, even to be on a podcast. I would laugh at the thought of me being on a podcast 5 years ago because, the public speaking and all of that, it just wasn't my thing. And I said I wouldn't do it. I said I'd never speak on stage, never be on podcasts. I don't even know why. I think it's just fear really sets in with a lot of this stuff. So just don't listen to whatever is going on in your head because it's not true.
I agree with you. I think like everything just compounds over time, and what you think you can accomplish in a year is typically a lot more than what you think in the short term. I always look back and I'm like, all this stuff just compiles and it compounds over and over. But it's all part of the journey. And like I alluded to, for me, happiness stems from growth and progress. The more you grow, the happier you are. I think that's just how it is, human nature,
That's true.
Well, anyways, Britt, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. This has been a pleasure. Where can folks get in touch with you?
Investor Girl Britt on all of this stuff. That's where I'm at. So say hello over there. I love
it. And maybe they'll maybe the listeners come and hang out with you down in Belize.
Yes.
We'll host a little mastermind. And we got to get you on our boutique hotel mastermind.
Yes,
absolutely. We'll talk more about that tonight. Anyways, she's Brittany Arnason. I'm Rich Summers. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.